Welcome back, friends. This is NRISamay, live from Los Angeles. Every week, we bring in extraordinary people onto the show, bringing in amazing stories, people who bring with them a lot of inspiration. And this week, we have two young women who in 1993 gave up everything, started an organization that cares for and rehabilitates homeless women and mentally ill people found on streets of Chennai. So this organization is the Banyan, and this organization provides women a safe shelter, the much needed care, medical attention, and a very supportive environment to enable them to recover and take responsibility for their lives again. I repeat, it's like making them stand on their own feet and making sure that they take the responsibility for their lives again. So this group also supports the women's return to their families and communities. When this is not possible, it supports the women in setting up their lives for themselves. So year after year, the Banyan organization has expanded from its original remit of homeless, mentally ill women alone, and it now provides community-based outpatient services both in Chennai and in rural setting of Kovalam, Kanchipuram district as well. So by offering accessible psychiatric care to all these homeless, mentally ill people in these settings, the Banyan is providing a model for a sector which currently lacks effective treatment, mental illness treatment options for those from all this low-income background and people who are homeless. So it's a great honor to have the Banyan young women, Vandana and Vaishnavi, on our show today. So we'll be starting off the show in the next.
Thank you, Shrikant. Vandana, I hope you can hear us loud and clear.
Yes, I can. Hi,
Suresh. Hi, Vandana. So to all the listeners, welcome to NRISamay. Today we have a very interesting personality, and Vandana. When I say Vandana, I'm talking to both Vandana and Vaishnavi, although Vaishnavi could not join us today on the show. So Vandana, take it. Every time I say Vandana, ask you something, it's meant for basically both of you.
Absolutely. I think that's how we've been working on any interview today.
All right. All right, great. So listeners, I'm sure each one of us at some point in our lives did come across a mentally ill who is homeless also. And maybe some of us did extend a helping hand by either providing them some food or clothes, or even sometimes help them move to a family for mentally ill. But by and large, if you were to take a poll, they are basically ignored. They are not someone who is worth spending time on. Not because we are that indifferent, but it's we have different priorities. Well, today, it's really an honor to have Vandana who thought otherwise, and along with Vaishnavi went on to build the Banyan, an organization that now has become a home to the mentally ill, where they are nurtured, where they are rehabilitated, and in some cases even reunited them with their families. So Vandana, warm welcome to NRISamay.
Thank you.
So what is it, Vandana, that made you do what you did? I know you would have been asked this question a million times so far, but I can't help but think, because at that young age, when you were about 22, I guess, when most of the youngsters are debating, whether to go to college or bunk the college, or whether to wear a blue jeans or a black jeans. How the typical youngsters, at that age think. I was one of them, and I certainly didn't have any clue at that point in time. So what is it that made you do what you did?
Well, for a start, I have to say that both Vaishnavi and I were like a lot of other youngsters. So we weren't really special, quote unquote, or different the way that you describe it. It's just that there was an incident that took place. See, just to give you some details on the backstory. Now, Vaishnavi and I were together in Women's Christian College. I was a year her senior. I went on then to enroll for a course in medical and psychiatric social work at the Madras School of Social Work. And as a result of that, we visited, the reason I say we is because I would visit as part of my curriculum, and then both Vaishnavi and I together in the evenings or over weekends would visit many of these places that I visited as part of my work. So one of them was the Institute of Mental Health in Kilpok in Chennai, for those of you who know Chennai. And the one thing that struck us about this institute is, there are several people who were our age, several women, because we worked more in the women's ward. And unfortunately, for no fault of theirs, by just some stroke of ill luck, they ended up living isolated lives with no hope to sort of chase a dream, with no hope or aspiration for the future. I think that really hit us hard and left us feeling a little angered, because it wasn't like they intended for it to be this way. It just ended up being this way. Now, soon after that, a particular incident took place outside Women's Christian College. So I was visiting Vaishnavi and I got off the bus, and there was this crowded bus stand, and there was this woman who was, almost in the nude, with matted hair, with lice all over her body, running from one end of the road to the other in a visibly deluded state. She looked really alone, quite scared, and was gesticulating madly to herself. Now, there were a lot of women standing at the bus stop, and I'm sure many of them wanted to do something, but were just scared or apprehensive and didn't know what really to do. And even if somebody wanted to reach out, they didn't really know where to take this woman and offer her whatever support that they could have at that point. So Vaishnavi, me, and the principal of Women's Christian College then tried dialing in and finding government homes that could reach out and, make a difference to the life of this woman, and unfortunately met with little or no success. And finally, there was this amazing organization called Uduvam Karangal that reached out and took her in and offered her a lot of support. But they were again overcrowded and had such a large number of people. They're one of the leading organizations in Chennai and take care of perhaps the largest number of people who've been ostracized by society. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that there is no focused way in which one could, reach out to this homeless person with a mental health issue, knowing fully well that with appropriate and timely medication and intervention, the life of this person could just change and return to as normal as you or me. So at that point, something struck us. We said that why is there such a low level of awareness as far as mental health issues go? Why is it that homelessness carries such a stigma? Why is it that we, in this world where we're all supposed to be evolved citizens, why do we allow for a part of our society or for people who are a part of our society to just blend with the background and turn invisible? So I think all of that angered us, and at 22, let me again reiterate, we were as normal as anybody else, but you do tend to get a lot more passionate, a lot more angered, a lot swifter in your reactions, and we were responsive individuals as well. So we said that no, we need to do something about this. But even at that point, we said let's do whatever we do after we enter regular jobs, maybe 10 years later. So I think, cutting the whole story short, I think this really was the seed that was sown, that angered us, that sort of motivated deep emotions. But that combined with the needs to do something entrepreneurial, because I did take on a job for a day, Vaishnavi did enroll for an MBA, but somehow I think life happened, and whether you call it chance, whether you call it divine providence, whether you call it a magical experience, but something happened and everything just came together almost like the universe conspired, and we set off a lot earlier than we did, perhaps a couple of months after we met this lady on the streets.
I see. Wow. So I think I like when you put it the way you put it, saying it as if the universe conspired and everything came together So was it your upbringing that gave you the strength and belief that you could actually take on this challenge of, not only just taking care of that one person that you happen to meet by chance, but you wanted to actually really create awareness about the mentally ill? Because I'm just trying to correlate, when I was in your shoes back in like 22 years, when I was 22 years young, I would have stopped by taking that woman to home for mentally ill. What was it that gave you that strength, or the belief that you could actually take on this?
Okay, I think it was a combination of two or three things. I'm glad that you brought up, the upbringing factor. I think both Vaishnavi and I are fortunate to have the most amazing set of parents and family. She's the youngest of 4 siblings, and I am an only child. Now, I think as far as I go, my parents have been a great source of inspiration for me. My father was in the Air Force, my mother a housewife, but my mother is a very responsive sort. So if she sees, every time that we'd go, so we'd make trips to temples, and every time that we went to temples, so every time that we went out for an ice cream, I had noticed that she'd, sort of established bonds with some of the people outside temples and near the ice cream parlor who would ask for alms. And she'd carry clothes for them, she'd buy them milk, we'd share ice creams with them. So we did everything almost as if it were natural. And I grew up seeing that. Not once did she say, well, share your things, or, this is the way that you ought to go about in life. But I just thought it normal that if you saw somebody less fortunate, you just respond spontaneously. So I think that left an indelible mark, and I just carried on being responsible. It could be an animal that's in distress. It could be a person who's being treated unfairly. Whatever the situation, she thought it normal to stick her neck and fight for the rights of those who didn't have a voice themselves. So I think that inspiration and that lesson that I just saw inspired me to be nothing but that. So I owe a large part of the person that I am to my genes and my mother. I think the same in Vaish's case. Yeah, her father as well was extremely giving, very sensitive, despite being the president of a very large company, always wanted to engage with civil society. So I think both of us owe the people that we are a lot to our parents. But beyond that, I think the question that you said that, you take a person to a home. See, we must remember that at that point, that's 20 years ago, and I think the situation is the same even now. The minute you mention mental health issues, it's not just in Chennai or in India for that matter, world over, the response towards people with mental health issues is a little confused, it's ambiguous. It's not been on the list of priorities for many leading organizations until recent times, when the World Health Organization has indicated that disability as a result of mental health issues would lead the disease-related burden and would end up by 2020 being next only to ischemic heart disease, which means it is a huge issue, it's an issue to reckon with, and it's easily identifiable. It can affect just about anybody. We ought to treat it with lesser stigma. We ought to respond in a timely way. So I think it's only in recent times that there's been a lot of sort of emphasis and focus, because things of the mind are very difficult to understand. Psychiatry itself is one of the newer professions, even if you look at it scientifically. It's not like medicine that's several thousand years old, several hundreds of years old. This is only a 200-year-old discipline. So, and in the past 200 years, I think we progressed a reasonable amount. But because it's to do with things of the mind, and because you can't be extremely certain that antipsychotics or antidepressants or yoga or meditation or a way of life or stress or a combination of all of this are the only precipitating factors. There is something that's quite mystical, that's mysterious, that's the unknown. So I think when you deal with things of the mind, you deal with it rather tentatively. And it's as a result of that we are in a sort of uncertain space, as a result of which the responses, both social and medical, are also somewhat uncertain. So because this issue hasn't gained as much importance as other issues, because we don't have clear-cut ways in which one can deal with this other than the ones that have been spoken of, I think we don't have the sort of opportunities or to respond concretely to the needs of a person with a mental health issue. So this continues even today. I'm a part of the mental health policy group in India, and it's about 10 or 12 of us who are looking at dealing with mental health issues of people in India. And what we're talking about is just one city and just the needs of homeless people with mental health issues. But in our country, we have 640 districts, and India is predominantly rural. So we have to deal with, two different issues here. One, you're dealing with the homelessness issue. Two, you're dealing with villages, lack of facilities, poverty. So I think it's a difficult sort of issue. We're trying to do the best that we can. And at that point, because one, we were inspired, two, there weren't adequate facilities, and three, most importantly, we realized that with adequate and timely intervention, people with mental health issues didn't have to continue to live as no-hopers. They could just sprout wings and fly and live their dreams. So I think that really was, amongst very many other things, the inspiration for us to set up the Banyan, and not merely have it run as a home, but have it run as a place of, a therapeutic sort of environment which would inspire people to either go back to their families, find jobs, or live normal lives like you and me.
Right. I think you made quite a few interesting remarks over there. One was your childhood. What seemed to be very normal for you was your mother, trying to make a somewhat of an impact to whoever it was that were less fortunate. I think that became a part of your life, and it came pretty natural to you, if I could say that. So I think the one thing that I do realize is that had this been the approach that how kids are brought up or kids taught in the schools, do you think that these kind of issues will be more easy to deal with?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think you made a very, very relevant point and a very important point. See, it's not just about mental health issues. And really now, we started off with that one person who was homeless, alone, battered, marginalized. But now, the way that we look at the Banyan, besides running a 200-bedded hospital for homeless women with mental health issues, we have several outreach programs in villages. We have programs in urban slums. We have self-help groups. So we've expanded, really, and entered the development space where the focus is not less, it is mental health, but it's also equity, and it's just a sense of oneness. So I think parents have a huge role in promoting this positive trend where you don't tend to look at people as different. If we look at all of us as one universe, if we look at us as one people, and if we look at just caring for each other in a natural and spontaneous way, that we be sensitive to the needs of every fellow being in this universe, then where would suffering emerge from? I mean, we just be concerned and sensitive and tuned into other people around us, that we promote a sense of oneness, a sense of equity, a sense of social justice. I think problems like the one that this woman faced, or several other people face in our country or the world over, as a result of stratification, segmentation, social class, economic class, is because there are so many barriers that we have created around ourselves that differentiates us from people around us. If we broke these barriers, broke these differences, and thought of all of us as one, which we do strangely in our childhood, which many animals do, I feel that we're moving away from those finer feelings to baser feelings. So as we grow older, we realize the differences. And so instead of maturing and evolving, we're sort of moving far away from our stage of innocence and our stage of just bringing different sorts of people together and living as one. So if parents can, inculcate the sense of oneness, the sense of unity, the sense of all people being the same, and the sense of sacredness that one would associate with human life in very simple ways, like my mother did, not consciously, but just as a manner of living life in a healthy, spiritual, peaceful, comforting, friendly sort of way. I think the world would be a better place.
Right. I think that's very important to have these kind of normalcy brought into the life as early as possible is something. I think that's a very valid point you made, and I think we can catch up on that later in the conversation.
We should, and I'm particularly concerned in today's world where there's so much of consumerism, so much of materialism. Everybody immediately brands and slots people into different groups depending on the cars they own, the clothes they wear, the schools they go, the work that the parents are engaged in. I think this is a really sad trend that's going to leave us divided as a populace. This is happening very much in India, and it truly bothers me. So and which is the reason why in India you have a 10% or a 15% who are absolutely rich, and you have the rest of the you have the middle class, and then you have the poorest of poor as well in India. So the divide really is growing. So if you have to bridge the divide, it has to be people around who are concerned enough not to sort of widen the gap further. So I think what you're saying, what you're bringing up repeatedly is a very, very important point. And both teachers, our education system, the government, other stakeholders, and particularly the parents, have a very, very important role to make it very clear to children there's no other way to live life other than think of us as one.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. Vandana, we have a caller waiting for you to ask. Pradeep from Machilipatnam. Pradeep, you're an NRISamay. You can go ahead with your question, sir.
This is Pradeep from Machilipatnam. Banyan organization was founded in 1993. Why does it not reach many people for such great work?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Why that organization does not reach more people? Actually, it is a great work done by people.
Why does the organization not reach more people? Is that your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, is that my question?
Okay, so, yeah. So, see, from the time that we started, like I said, we started in a small rented place, and at that point we thought there'd be only 25 homeless people with mental health issues. From 25 we grew to 100 in that rented place, and then we asked the government for support. The chief minister gave us land. We built a 24,000 square feet building, and then today we have a 200-bedded hospital that reaches out to 200 homeless women with mental health issues. But we realized that increasing numbers was also affecting our quality. So merely taking care of all the homeless people in Chennai, or for the matter in India, was not something that the Banyan had the bandwidth to do. We didn't have the resources, and what we wanted to do well. Because if you look at the history of mental hospitals, you associate a lot of atrocities, a lot of sort of human rights violations with mental hospitals. So that's the other thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to, we are a licensed psychiatric nursing home. So we're trying to build the need to brand mental hospitals differently and say that there is a need for institutionalized care, but there are these sense of ethics, and there are these protocols, there are these standard measures that you have to adhere to. Mental hospitals don't necessarily need to be bad places and a bad word. They can be a good place where people are cared for, where a therapeutic environment is provided, and where people can go back to living normal lives. That's what we've done with Adekalam, the 200-bedded hospital. But in addition, like you say, we did recognize 10 years ago that it wasn't sufficient to just look at the needs of homeless people with mental health issues, and the problem really was, like I said earlier, out of 640 districts in our country, only 123 have a district mental health program. So there are several people in poorer places, particularly in villages, remote, distant, with no primary health center as well, that are in need of support such as this, that is just to have a basic mental health sort of facility. So what we did then about 10 years ago was to expand our services, not look at just the needs of homeless mentally ill people, and not just to focus on institutionalized care, but to expand the scope to set a range, a spectrum of services, so to sort of promote the notion of continued care. So at that point, we realized that there was a need for an urban mental health program. So we set up a program for 1,000 people in a slum in Chennai, in collaboration with an educational institute, the Loyola College, for those of you who know that. We also expanded to providing care in villages. So we took Kovalam as our base, and we set up a program for a 2 lakh population. That's a whole block in Tirupurur district, in Tirupurur block in Kanchipuram district for about 4,500 people who access our clinic. We said, well, all right, so you have an urban mental health program, you have a rural mental health program, you have an emergency care service. What about long-term care? So let's set up a model for an ideal long-term service. So we set up this concept of a protected community where we have different groups of people with long-term needs who cannot go back home or who don't have homes to go back to, who are sort of well but not entirely well and need some sort of assisted living. They form group homes. You know, this concept in mental health is a sort of prominent concept where different sorts of people with different needs just group into a particular cottage and live there in an open community with just assisted support. So we have one such place for 60 people. We have some people from there moving onward and living in the community, federating into self-help groups, working, living independent lives. So we have 24 people there. So really, I think we've expanded to the extent that we have to provide the whole spectrum of services. We have the resources only to do this, but we have an extension of the Banyan called the Banyan Academy of Leadership in Mental Health, where the focus really is to research what we've done and then train other stakeholders in the sector. So we have partners now in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhindwara. In fact, just a month ago, I spent about a week to 10 days in Chhindwara, where we worked with a partner so they could then collaborate with the government and other stakeholders in their region to provide similar services. We have a partner in Nagpur. We have a partner in Vellore. We have a partner in Mysore. We have a partner in Ashadeep. So we may not be in a position to do all the work ourselves, and rightfully so, but we collaborate with multiple stakeholders to expand the scope of our service, which is what we've done through all our partners.
Great. So I think what you're saying, Vandana, is at that point, on even now, the banyan tree, you have limited yourself to giving the best quality care that you could to the mentally ill, and at the same time you're also working on branching out and helping out the similar organizations, setting up rural healthcare programs, and trying to create more awareness around this. So that's how you're basically sharing your experiences and your way of life with the mentally ill.
Absolutely. See, our strategy really has been to, one, demonstrate successful models in mental health care. So we've created an example of multiple services that would constitute a holistic mental health intervention. That includes emergency care, rural mental health models, urban mental health models, employment opportunities, daycare facilities, so self-help groups, long-term care. So these are the 7 branches. So we've done all of that ourselves. It's not just the hospital that we run for homeless mentally ill people, but we've done all this in different places ourselves over the past 19 years of our work. What we did recently was use all this experience, research it, and as a strategic sort of next move, collaborate with other partners, both the government and non-governmental organizations, to scale up services and to replicate some of the Banyan's work so that we're able to work in resource-deficient areas and provide similar services there, either as a civil society organization or in collaboration with the government. So that really has been our strategic next move.
Right. I think on the similar lines, Archana Raghavan from New Jersey had a question online. Can you please help elaborate more on the rural mental health care program that you just happened to mention?
Okay. So, see, one of our strategies to sort of, indicate how a rural mental health program could work was to do it ourselves. So about 6 or 7 years ago, in Kanchipuram district, we decided to work. This is soon after the tsunami. We happened to visit, this is independent of the Banyan. As individuals, we just tried to do something during the tsunami. When we met a group of villagers there who had suffered great loss and were extremely traumatized. So we, in a very simple way, tried providing some basic counseling and some basic mental health sort of support, in addition to, of course, looking at the livelihood options and providing boats and things like that. But like I said, this was more as an individual, a personal sort of initiative. Right. Gradually, we saw that the need emerged for us to, come up with a slightly more holistic mental health package, because the suffering was sort of deep, and some people had sunken into psychotic depression and were suicidal. At that point, we set up a small mental health clinic out of a little hut, and we provided both counseling and medication in case there were people identified with a serious mental health issue that needed medical treatment as well. When we did that 6 years ago, the need just happened to grow, and it wasn't just people from Kovalam village, but people from adjoining areas as well, and mostly from Tiruporur block. So the way in which, our health system works at 4 different levels. So it works at the sub-center level. I'm talking about in our country, not the Banyan. At the primary health center level, at the Taluk hospital level, and finally at the district hospital level. So for Kanchipuram, at the district, you'd have most of your specialities focused there. But Kovalam is sort of far away. So even if a psychiatrist or even if a mental health facility is at the district, for a person to travel all the way from Kovalam or from Tiruporur block, which is one of the 13 blocks in the district, sometimes, 1, costs a lot of money, 2, is just a lot of effort. So the caregiver has to forgo his wages, and there are multiple problems associated with that. So to provide services locally is the way to go. And this is not just the trend in Kovalam or in Chennai or in Tamil Nadu, but in India as a matter of policy. And this is a similar trend in many of the low-resource countries across the globe. So what we tried doing then is to establish a similar model to remove stigma and to integrate mental health into primary health care. So we decided that it wouldn't just be a mental health clinic. We provide medical support for multiple other problems, not serious problems, but just problems like, say, a cold, a cough, a fever. And as people, sort of opened up to the idea of seeking services locally for these problems, they also came in with a lot of other psychosomatic problems, some with slightly more severe mental health problems like, say, schizophrenia or bipolar issues. So gradually there was some sort of integration between primary health care and mental health care. And people didn't look at it with as much stigma. They thought it natural to come to one clinic which would offer both a mental health service and a primary health service. So the numbers increased, and now about 6 years later, we have about 4,500 people who access this clinic from predominantly the Tiruporur block, but sometimes even outside the block and falling into the Kanchipuram district area. Of the 4,500, about 2,500 people access psychiatric care over here. So this is the way in which our country is also planning to. It's not something that we've initiated. It's something that's part of what one refers to as the district mental health program in India, which was launched way back in 1980. So we have 123 districts covered by the district mental health program, which is supported by the government of India and by various state governments. Now, we try to do exactly the same thing, but perhaps with a very important component of counseling and another important component of daycare and employment opportunities. So we tried to, bring together the social aspects and the clinical aspects, and I think that worked really well and, worked in our favor. So that's what the rural mental health program is about.
I see. But that's very good. I think you're making it more of a practical solution rather than someone treating this as some sort of a spiritual or going out of their way to lend a helping hand for the mentally ill. I think that approach is much more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think we have another question online from Srihari. Vandana, you had mentioned about how there is abuse especially with the mentally ill people in the regular hospitals. Now, when they are facilitated in the banyan tree, do you give like special emphasis on the people who are either volunteers or who are working there full time? Do you give some kind of sessions with them, as to how they should be treated or how they should be taken care of to make sure that these abuses don't happen in the banyan tree?
Yeah, absolutely. See, we've also learned the hard way. I think what was good was when we started, we lived with the people that we cared for, which means if we rescued homeless people with mental health issues, it wasn't like we were living someplace else and that these people were living in another place in a typical mental hospital. All of us lived in the same place. So Vaishnavi and I lived in a room right at the entrance of the building, and then the rest of the rooms were for people with homeless people with mental health issues whom we rescued. So there was Sundari, there was Chellamma, there was Ramkumar, there were several people, and we lived as a family. I think that we started that way, and we didn't start en masse. We didn't think of it as a mental hospital. Really helped. We thought of it as a small commune of people. So the way that we lived was that each of us would have a turn to cook, each of us would clean. We lived as a familyhood. The same ethos then we carried through when we expanded and had to bring in a lot of caregivers. So also the caregivers that we got in, it's not like, so we have a combination of professionals today. We're 100 solid staff group. But when we started off, we were very small. So we had just us, and then the first health care worker came our way, and then after a year or 2 years we had a social worker, and then after 5 years we had an occupational therapist. So we've grown to get to this point where we have a multidisciplinary sort of support with multiple professionals and with healthcare workers. But the core, the primary care is provided by whom we refer to as a healthcare worker, who is usually a woman between in her 20s, from a village in Kanchipuram district itself, usually. So she is aware, she is herself, because the poverty that she's experienced in her life, she's herself empathetic and kinder and more sensitive to the needs of other people and she sort of naturally doesn't differentiate. But in addition to this background that she comes from, we go through a lot of rigorous training. So today we have a list of, we have a checklist. So right from the entry point onwards, it's not that we don't, I'm certain that we don't have human rights violations in terms of abuse, but we do have a slip in behavior every now and then because it can become very difficult also for a caregiver sometimes. But we have also our set of, protocols and our set of supervision, our set of monitoring, where if at all there is a slip in behavior, we're able to pick it up immediately. So I think for any mental hospital or any licensed psychiatric nursing home to operate well, training is extremely important. The sort of people that you pick for them to be sensitive, empathetic is extremely important, and your checks and balances, your protocols, and the way in which you monitor your systems is extremely important. So today we've reached a point where we're able to bring the 3 points together, and we actually have a manual where we know exactly what each person has to do and how they have to do it. Like I said earlier, slips are always possible. Even at the Banyan, even today we have slips. But for example, we have surprise night rounds. So you go in the night to see is the place clean, are the people safe, is everybody sleeping well. We have something called a grievance box. So anybody who is upset with anything, including food, the way a person has interacted with her, can just drop in a grievance. We pick it up, and we have a grievance redressal system where we have an external committee. So if people are intimidated by some of the people inside and feel, there's no point, I'm going to speak to her and she'll speak to her boss, and I really don't have control. Important in mental hospitals, because the one thing that happens usually is that you're cut off from the world outside, so you feel alone, you feel isolated, and you have no chance to fight for your own rights. So we have converted the Banyan into an open environment where, regardless of wherever you have the opportunity to complain, you have the opportunity to access the outside world. I think this is most important in mental hospitals, to initiate a sense of transparency, which we've hopefully managed to do.
I think that's a very, very important point you brought out. I should admire you for openly admitting that there could be slip-ups happening, but at the same time you're ensuring to pick it up and make sure that you follow the necessary corrective actions from there on. I think this kind of transparency is really the need of our, not just in hospitals per se, but I think in every walk of life. I think this kind of discipline is very much required. You made a very valid point, Vandana. We have another caller, Srihari, online. Srihari, you can go ahead with your question, sir.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for Vandana ji for incredible work, and also coming to NRISamay and interact with all of us.
Thank you.
My question is, so there is mentally ill, and so autism people, do they fall under mentally ill, or are they different? If so, how do you guys deal differently with different types of the mental health people?
Okay. Okay. So broadly, autism would fall under the gamut of mental health issues, but what the work that we are involved in is not so much with either children or with people with intellectual disabilities. We work more with people with acute and chronic mental health issues such as schizophrenia, bipolar issues, that's mood disorders, and depression. So it's more people who suffer from a certain form of psychosis that we work with. But there are a lot of other amazing organizations in Chennai and the world over who work with people who have problems with autism or with dyslexia or with other learning disabilities, or who have a person with spasticity at home. So there are several other organizations like Vidyasagar, the Spastic Society of India, the National Trust in India, which is doing amazing work with several other partners who work with people with such issues. But our focus really is schizophrenia, bipolar issues, and clinical depression.
Okay, I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
So what is the admission process? Are you only take destitute people, or you also take referrals and other ways?
No, we only cater to homeless people with mental health issues in our residential service, but in our outpatient service, anybody with any issue with any mental health issue can come access our outpatient service free of cost, which means you have access to our psychiatrist, you have access to our clinical psychologist, to our counselors, to our occupational therapist, and to free medication. An extension of the service would also mean that you could get placed in a daycare, again free of cost, and that's open to anybody. And you will be supported in finding or seeking an employment for yourself. So all this is for just about anybody. But our residential care services are only for homeless people with mental health issues.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, just another question. So how do you find the homeless people? Sorry if it's already covered. I joined about 10 minutes late.
No problems. How do we... well, homeless people with mental health issues are really very visible because they're quite alone on the streets, and you usually see them with matted hair, speaking to themselves, walking alone on the streets, eating off garbages. Some of them that we have rescued, we rescued in really terrible conditions with broken limbs, with maggots coming out of their heads. So they're really the most marginalized, most invisible people, so they're very easy to spot if you're looking for them. But in addition, we also have, now Chennai has woken up to the needs of mental health issues, especially amongst homeless people. So we have several people calling in. In fact, we are full up now, so we're trying to find other places who can accommodate people with mental health issues and trying to once again liaison with the Institute of Mental Health. We also have gone through several sensitization and training programs with the police and the judiciary, because it's not like you can just pick anybody off the streets and admit them. There is a judicial process that you have to adhere to. There is a Mental Health Act in our country. So if a person is unwell, then you have to seek support from a psychiatrist, get a medical certificate, present the person before a magistrate. The magistrate has to sign a reception order with support from the police usually, and then the person can be admitted into a mental hospital, whether it's government run or a place like the Banyan. Again, after a 30-day period, the person has to be reviewed by the magistrate so that nobody is unlawfully tucked away from society and kept in a mental hospital. So these reviews take place, and after the third review, that's after a 90-day period, the person has necessarily to be discharged, unless there is no place for the person to go to, in which case you have to again present the person before the magistrate and decide together with the magistrate and a committee about the next steps as far as the person goes. So in terms of how do you reach out, it's usually referrals from other organizations, society, just anybody, any caller from who sees a person and who's concerned, the police, maybe the magistrates at points.
All right. Thank you very much, Vandana, and thank you, Srihari, for asking all the questions. We have another caller, Vandana, from Bangalore. His name is Suren. Suren, you can go with your question, sir. Suren, are you there? All right, we might have lost him. Maybe we can try again later. But Vandana, I think you mentioned earlier about your work with the mental health. You're a member of the mental health policy group, right?
That's right.
I think we have Suren back on air. I think we have Suren back on air. Suren, are you there?
Yes.
All right, can you go ahead with your question?
Yeah. Actually, I want to know whether do you have any volunteer option, and do you have branches or something like in Bangalore?
Are you breaking?
Okay,
I heard the first part of your question, which is do you have volunteer options? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and the second part was, do you have anything in Bangalore also? I think Suren is from Bangalore, so he wanted to know whether he can help out while he's in Bangalore.
Okay. Yeah, sure. We have numerous volunteer options. Now, since you're in Bangalore, we do have a BAM or a Banyan fellow in Bangalore who's actually working in the beggar's home with support from NIMHANS. So, if you'd like to volunteer in Bangalore, you can just write to me. My email address is vandana.gopikumar@thebanyan.org, and I'll put you in touch with the right people. But if you want to volunteer for the Banyan, you could do work online. So there's a lot of written work that we have. There's some admin work that you could do online. So that is certainly a possibility. But whatever be the case, if you could just write me a mail, I'll put you in touch with the right people either within the Banyan, or I could also put you in touch with other organizations in Bangalore that do similar work.
All right. Thank you, Suren, for asking that question. Vandana, I did want to ask this question towards the end of the show, but now that Suren has already asked, would you mind, giving any other like volunteer options that you want at this point in time, or maybe going forward, how people can contribute no matter where they are and who they are?
Okay. So, besides the women who, become well and talk about how a person with a mental health issue can live a normal life, really are volunteers. I think the reason that we are the way that we are, and the reason that we've gotten this far is because there's several people who have been a part of the family, who believed in our work and just pushed for, pushed our boundaries to just sort of try and reach out as much more as we can. Several things that people do. One is that if you're in Chennai, come and spend time with our residents. I think that is the finest form of volunteering, and that is much needed because people who are in organizations, like I said earlier, are tucked away from a lot of other normal activity that many of us, have in our lives. So to interact with them, to try and give them an opportunity to vent their feelings is very, very important. So come volunteer with and spend time with our residents. You could even take them out after you go through, of course there is a process of checks and we don't want anything wrong going on, but we have several volunteers who take them out to temples, to churches, to mosques, to eateries, to the park, to Sarvara Bhavan. So I think that is one part of it. The other part of it is that you could help with our admin work if you're in Chennai. You could help with our financial accounting process, with letter writing, with organizing systems. The third part is you could help in liaising with other organizations, because that's a significant part of our work now. When we, for example, rescue an elderly woman, she may not fit into Banyan, but we need to find another place. So that's the third part. You could help BAM by engaging in some research, if research is your area of expertise. Finally, you could engage in a very important area, which is in raising funds for the Banyan and creating awareness on the Banyan. And if you create awareness on the Banyan, you're also creating awareness on mental health issues. So you could speak in schools, you could speak in colleges, you could gather volunteer support, and you could gather financial support. There are a lot of people doing that. In fact, here in the U.S., we have a Friends of the Banyan U.S., which was started by an amazing lady called Hema, who decided that she wanted to do. She'd been in touch with the Banyan, I think in her when she was in Chennai. I'm not sure of the exact details, but then she was inspired to do something beyond that. And by herself, she set up this Friends of the Banyan U.S. in coordination with another, again, lovely lady called Lata, and they have a few others like Latika and a couple of others who are part of the Friends of the Banyan U.S. So they try and raise funds here because that's something that's a constant need for the Banyan. We run into, the amount of work. I've just explained that there's numerous activities that we're involved in, and we have faced a monthly deficit of about 5 lakhs of Indian rupees. So besides several other volunteers in India and different parts of the world, Hema, Lata, and the Friends of the Banyan U.S. tries to raise funds for us and tries to raise other forms of support as well, like other volunteers. So they help with fundraising events. They help with, it doesn't have to be money. It could be items, like you could decide to donate rice, food, sanitary napkins, clothes. That can be a donation in terms of the time that you spend, a donation in terms of the financial resources, or a donation in kind.
Right. Thank you very much, Vandana. I think we've actually spoken to Narayan and Krishnan sometime back on NRISamay, and
right.
when you mentioned Lata and Hema, I think they are also associated with Akshaya Trust in the U.S.
That's right.
Right. And we had an online question. Someone wanting to know whether you would go to partner with Akshaya Trust in Madurai, because I think this came up when you were talking about how you were trying to branch out, share your experiences or expertise with other organizations.
Right. So, we've actually, you'd be surprised to know that long back, before Krishnan took off the way that he did, we did do a little bit with Akshay. So we did visit him twice or thrice. He's visited and the Banyan, and also interacted with us and gotten to know about the work that we do. We also did put 1 or 2 donors in touch with him, but beyond that we haven't progressed so far. So maybe we go back and visit him again.
All right, great. It's a small world.
Yeah, it is.
All right, we have another caller, Vandana, Shrikant. So you can go ahead.
Hi Vandana, thank you for coming to NRISamay. My question is, lot of these organizations have similarities, and when we visited a temple recently for fundraising, they're saying that you can offer in cash, you can offer in kind, like they're saying that you can give blankets, you can pay for the cots and other things. So we absolutely are unable to understand what's the procedure. If you could elaborate on that. There are innumerous people where we can collect tons and tons of these items, but we don't know how to send it. If you can elaborate on that procedure, it will help a lot of listeners. Thank you.
Elaborate on the process of how to ship these items?
Yes. And what it takes to do that. Is there any procedural hassles for that? That is what I was looking out for.
Okay, so we usually haven't had people ship things from abroad except for once, because it is indeed very, very expensive. What we have, unless it's like a huge bulk, so during the tsunami there were huge shipments that came by. But otherwise, if people want to donate, money for specific items, then they send us, you can donate through Friends of the Banyan. If it's a Banyan, you can donate through Friends of the Banyan US and gain your tax exempt status. If you want to donate in India, in Indian rupees, again, we are tax exempt over there. And if you want to, make sure that it is for a specific article, you can specify that. We have options on our website. So you can say that, this donation is for this specific item. And then we would buy that specific item, take a photograph and send it. But if your question is more, how do we ship things? I'm afraid I may not have the answer for that, because I know that these shipments do, cost a lot. So we haven't so far had bulk items being shipped from here. We've had more financial donations for a specific purpose, and then we've bought the items back home.
I recently.
I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah, I recently heard from one organization that they send it by sea, and it reaches out in 3.5 months. And that's the most inexpensive way of doing things. There are a lot of NRIs who have got a ton of items that they can send it across. Did you explore such an option, or did you come across any of those things?
Not in our work. No, we haven't explored the option of too many things being shipped. There was one person who wanted to do this from the UK, and then when we explored the financial expenses, it was a huge, bill. So we dropped the idea. She dropped the idea at that point. She said that she would just make a donation and that we should buy the items there locally. But yes, we should explore this option and see if, we can find a cheaper way out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shrikant, for your question. Vandana, before I let you go, I really need to ask you this question. Since now you are sort of working with the government as a member of the mental health policy group, which is obviously constituted by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. In your experience with working with the government, how seriously does the health ministry take your opinions, your suggestions, your models, your working models rather, and how you have been able to prove through Banyan and other initiatives that you have taken up that yes, this is the way that mental illness as a disease can be treated, and they can be rehabilitated, reunited with their families. Like, how seriously do they take all these opinions?
Okay, I'll have to say that the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is amazingly proactive. Maybe the reason is because this whole team is led by a very, very dynamic bureaucrat who's the Additional Secretary Health, and also the Joint Director in charge specifically of mental health is an amazing woman. So this duo, that's Mr. Keshav D.C. Raju and Mrs. Sujaya Krishnan, are just amazing people. And I think finally it's people who make all the difference. Sadly, it should be systems and it should be set protocols, but sadly it's always people who make the difference. So because it's the two of them, it's not just the Banyan and our opinion, so it's beyond the Banyan here, and I've grown in that space now, which I think is important for all NGOs. So it shouldn't be so much about the Banyan or SCARF or Akshaya or, it is about the cause, and it is that we have to work in a way in which we can support each other and work in a way in which we can impact the sector in our country positively. So there's a group of 10 people, many of them psychiatrists. There are, I think, 2 NGOs. Besides me, there's ACME, that's another NGO, but many of the others are psychiatrists, professionals, academics, and people of repute. So all of us together put our heads to look at how we can strengthen the public health system to respond more proactively to the needs of people with mental health issues. We're very aware that we're working in a country that's resource deficient. We have extremes. So we have a city with many hospitals. We have a private facility with many options. And then we have a whole lot of villages where electricity, sanitation, basic health facilities, basic food is such an issue. We're still debating, as you are aware, about the BPL status, whether it should be 28 or 32, which I think is ridiculous. So we work in a country with such diversity. So to answer your question, yes, the Mental Health Policy Group and the government of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is very serious about what it's doing. I think I see a lot of hope as far as this group goes, because it's led by amazingly dynamic and proactive people. But beyond that, in terms of influencing people through the Banyan experience or through any other experience, I think, one doesn't need to influence when they see results. I mean, you see a person who's been homeless, who's been, like I said, maggot infested, who's come to us in such a terrible situation, not just from Chennai or from Tamil Nadu, but from different parts of the country. We have people from Pratapgarh, people from Assam, people from Kashmir, one lady from Sri Lanka, one lady from France, one lady from the UK, several people that just wanted to, and then what are the lessons that you take away? That it can affect anybody, the social class or social strata doesn't matter. You end up the way that you are as a result of deprivation. So it's not like you were chosen or picked for this. It's just that it struck you. And then you realize that this person who was there on the streets wandering had a family who didn't really abandon you many times, but didn't know what else to do. So the person took you to a temple, a church, or a mosque, and then you didn't get better. The person had 3 other children to take care of, didn't have food, would drink chili water very often just to satisfy her hunger so she could feed her kids, went to a nearby primary health center. More often than not, didn't have a doctor there. Like, for example, in Chindwara, you have about hundreds of primary health centers, of which 80 of them don't have a doctor. So with this sort of a background, you can't really blame the caregiver or the family. And then finally, despite all that, this person finds the courage with timely intervention and treatment to get better, goes back to the same society, lives a life, respectable life, works, takes care of her children. So I think this turnaround by itself is sufficient to influence policymakers, to influence public, to influence people like you and me, and to send a very strong message that if given a chance or an opportunity, if provided appropriate intervention at the right point, anybody affected with a mental health issue can just turn around and live a nice, healthy, productive, happy life. So I think that by itself is the message that the Banyan or Akshaya or any other organization like ours would immediately communicate and thus influence.
All right, thank you, Vandana. One of the questions I did want to ask you was, we definitely need more and more Vandanas and Vaishnavis to, help with the situation. So I was going to ask you, what are we doing to make this a more institutionalized sort of an approach rather than being an individual sort of an approach? But I think I got the answer now. So
okay.
Thank you very much for your time, and definitely hope your vision and mission to make the homeless and the mentally ill as much as part of the society as the so-called privileged people keeps growing stronger, and you get more and more people to join you. And although we just spoke for 1 hour, I think you spoke volumes. And if someone listens carefully, there's message for every person out there, parents, children, teachers, government, and everybody. So it was great to have you on our show today, and really appreciate you and also Vaishnavi for all the amazing work you've done.
Thank you so much, Suresh. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you. Well, that's it for today, folks. But we'll be back again tomorrow, same time, with another guest and another intriguing topic. Mr. Gopi Krishnan, who was the first to expose the 2G spectrum. So same time tomorrow, do tune into NRISamay. Thank you and enjoy the music.
ये जो देश है तेरा स्वदेश है तेरा, तुझे है पुकारा। नहीं सकता। मिट्टी की जो खुशबू तू कैसे भुलाएगा, तू चाहे दस जाए तू लौट के आएगा। नई नई राहों में दबी दबी राहों में खोए खोए दिल से तेरे कोई ये कहेगा, ये जो देश है तेरा स्वदेश है तेरा, तुझे है पुकारा। ये वो बंधन है जो कभी टूट नहीं सकता। जिंदगी है ये कह रही सब तो पानिया, अब है क्या कमी। यूं तो सारे सुख है पर से, पर दूर तू है अपने घर से। आ लौट चल तू अब दीवाने, जहाँ कोई तो तुझे अपना माने। आवाज दे तुझे बुलाने वही देश, ये जो देश है तेरा स्वदेश है तेरा, तुझे है पुकारा। ये वो बंधन है जो कभी टूट नहीं सकता।
सब आ गए हो, मैं चैन से मर सकता।
अपनी चौखट का दिया और गिविंग लाइट टू नेबर्स हाउस।
मैंने तय कर लिया विनोद, मुझे वापस जाना है।
फिर वही बात, तो एक लड़की के लिए वापस कैसे जा सकते हैं? जस्ट पर्सुएड हर टू कम हियर।
वो बात नहीं है विनोद, ये सिर्फ गीता और कावेरी अम्मा के बारे में नहीं।
ये पल है वही जिसमें है छुपी पूरी एक सदी सारी जिंदगी। तू ना पूछ रास्ते में काहे आए हैं इस तरह दो राहें। तू ही तो है राह जो सुझाए, तू ही तो है अब जो ये बताए। जाए तो किस दिशा में जाए वही दे, ये जो देश है तेरा स्वदेश है तेरा, तुझे है पुकारा। ये वो बंधन है जो कभी टूट नहीं सकता।
मैं समझ गया, I got it। तूने एक बल्ब क्या जलाया तो समझ रहा है अब तो पूरे देश में क्रांति लाएगा।
रब से
टाउन हॉल का केयरटेकर हूँ। अमनुल्लाह खान नाम है मेरा। ये देखिए आएगा। जाइए। शुक्रिया।